Seriously, Horace, you'd think these shoes would be waterproof. I mean, they kind of semi only exist with me, don't they? Should I have worn an extra layer of socks? I feel really freezing in this room. Oh, oh, hello there! Hello, hello, hello! Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear, marvelous, wonderful scholars, to the study. I thought that was clever. Didn't you think that was clever, Horace? I thought it was clever. Hello there, hello there, hello there. Hello there, Yulian20. Congratulations on getting first. Hello there, Dr. Zadium. Welcome. Hello there, Firefly. Good evening to you as well. And ho, 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 Yulian20. How are you all doing, my wonderful scholars? Are you doing well? Also, a shout out to all you scholars out there all across the world, wherever you are, whenever you are. Welcome. Yulian20, glad to be here. Glad to hear it, glad to hear it. I don't know why this room, especially in the study, is very dry, so I'm trying to keep myself hydrated. Gonna have to keep myself hydrated during this time. Everything going well on your end, everyone? Horace and I, well, we've been, kind of locked in this room for the past day. Went in to do an early check on it, and, somehow I locked the door behind me, and, yeah, it's kind of cold here. Firefly. Finally sat down and now I'm tired. Oh, I have been there, Firefly. I've been there. Most of the time. But yes, today itself has been a okay day, quiet. Though, technically it's always quiet, really. I mean, I only have Virgil and Ovid to keep me company. And Horace. Of course, Horace. But, yeah, it's been very, very quiet. Not much to do. All by myself. Don't want to be all by myself. Oh, no, wait, I can't sing that. Can't sing that. Could get in trouble for that. Should gonna die. Anyway. Anyway. Well, I'm glad to have you all here, my dear, dear, wonderful scholars. And I hope everything's going well. If it isn't going well, I hope this stream will help you relax, help you feel better. Will give you a calm, nice place to be. But yes, so I suppose I should be talking about what we're doing tonight's stream, shouldn't I, Horace? Mm, yeah, we should probably talk about that. So then, tonight, my dear, wonderful, marvelous scholars, we'll be reading the second chapter. Well, stave. Dickens always liked a theme. The second stave of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. For all you scholars who are new to this, every year since I first began streaming for all of you, I have been reading A Christmas Carol during the holidays. It's our official holiday stream. Um, I think I did it every year. Yeah, I did it every year. Um, and what we do, instead of reading the entire book in one stream or bits pieces, we break up the book into their chapters and do a chapter a stream. Now this means that the stream will probably be shorter depending on the length of the chapter. Usually though, afterwards we have a little discussion. We'll talk about the chapter. We'll talk about how it's shown in other adaptations. And yes, and then we'll enjoy ourselves. Well, I should probably talk about last week. So, a little bit of a little bit of a summary of last week. Last week, um, last time we read the first chapter. We were introduced to Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly, miserable old man. Um, and Horace, help me with this. I'm not doing a good introduction. Oh yes, yes. Um, Ebenezer Scrooge had. I can't get this out of my mouth. So, Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly old man who lives in London, works as a well. Actually, it's never mentioned in the books what he actually does for a living. We are told that he lends out money, but that's it. We don't know much. Ebenezer Scrooge hates Christmas, sees it as pointless. His his clerk, Bob Cratchit, seemingly enjoys it, as does his nephew Fred. He Two men offer to try and have him donate some money to the poor. Apparently, he hates the poor as well. And that evening, he is visited by the ghost of his 7 years dead partner, Jacob Marley, who appears to him and warns him that if he does not change his ways, he will be forever forced to to be miserable in the hereafter, bound by the many chains he forged in life. But he does have a chance out, which is he will be visited by three spirits, and if he does not, and only if he listens to what they have to say, will he be able to save himself. Was that a good one, Horace? I feel like that summary was kind of rough. What do you think, my dear scholars? Was that summary okay? What do you think? Did I do it okay? Felt a little rough to me. Did I miss anything? Julian 20. It was rough? Oh dear. Horace Julian 20 thinks it's rough. What do I do? Julian 20. No. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, yes. Anyway. Um, but now it is time. Julian 20, you did a good job explaining. Ah, thank you. Now it is time for the second chapter and the first of his visitors. So then, my dear scholars, shall we begin our reading of this traditional holiday fair? Mm. Julian 20 says yes, please. Okay. So then, my dear scholars, sit back, relax, have a hot cocoa, dim the lights if you wish, and let us continue our reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I need to hydrate for this. Alien 20. God rest ye merry gentlemen, yet nothing you dismay. Christmas carols. Stave 2. The first of the three spirits. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of bed he could scarcely distinguish through the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber. He was endeavoring to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes, when the chimes of a neighboring church struck the 4 quarters. So he listened for the hour. To his great astonishment, the heavy bell went on from 6 to 7, from 7 to 8, and regularly up to 12, then stopped. 12? It was past 2 when he went to bed. The clock was wrong. An icicle must have got into the works. 12. He touched the spring of his repeater to correct this most preposterous clock. Its rapid little pulse beat 12, and stopped. Excuse me.
"Why, it isn't possible," said Scrooge, "that I can have slept through a whole day and far into another night. It isn't possible that anything has happened to the sun, and this is 12 at noon.
The idea being an alarming one, he scrambled out of bed and groped his way to the window. He was obliged to rub the frost off with the sleeve of his dressing gown before he could see anything, and could see very little then. All he could make out was that it was still very foggy and extremely cold, and that there was no noise of people running to and fro and making a great stir, as there unquestionably would have been if night had beaten off bright day and taken possession of the world. This was a great relief, because 3 days after sight of the first of exchange pay to Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge or his order, and so forth, would have become a mere United States security if there were no days to count by. Scrooge went to bed again, and thought, and thought, and thought it over and over and over, and could make nothing of it. The more he thought, the more perplexed he was, and the more he endeavored not to think, the more he thought. Marley's ghost bothered him exceedingly. Every time he resolved within himself, after mature inquiry, that it was all a dream, his mind flew back again like a strong spring released to its first position, and presented the same problem to be worked all through. Was it a dream or not? Scrooge lay in this state until the chimes had gone 3/4 more, when he remembered, on a sudden, that the ghost had warned him of a visitation when the bell tolled 1. He resolved to lie awake until the hour was past, and considering that he could no more go to sleep than go to heaven, this was perhaps the wisest resolution in his power. The quarter was so long that he was more than once convinced he must have sunk into a doze unconsciously, and missed the clock. At length, it broke upon his listening ear. Ding dong.
"A quarter past,"
said Scrooge, counting. Ding dong.
"Half past,"
said Scrooge. Ding dong.
"A quarter to it,"
said Scrooge. Ding dong.
"The hour itself,"
said Scrooge triumphantly.
"and nothing else."
He spoke before the hour bell sounded, which it now did, with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, I tell you, by a hand. Not the curtains at his feet, not the curtains at his back, but those to which his face was addressed. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, and Scrooge, starting up into a half-recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them. As close to it as I am now to you, and I am standing in the spirit at your elbow. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view, and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. The arms were very long and muscular, the hands the same, as if its hold were of uncommon strength. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, were, like those upper members, bare. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was, that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright, clear jet of light, of which all this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using, in its duller moments, a great extinguisher for a cap, which it now held under its arm. Even this, though, when Scrooge looked at it with increasing steadiness, was not its strangest quality. For as its belt sparkled and glittered now in one part and now in another, and what was light one instant at another time was dark, so the figure itself fluctuated in its distinctness, being now a thing with one arm, now with one leg, now with 20 legs, now a pair of legs without a head, now a head without a body, of which dissolving parts no outline would be visible in the dense gloom wherein they melted away. And in the very wonder of this, it would be itself again, distinct and clear as ever. Excuse me.
Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?
Asked Scrooge.
I am.
The voice was soft and gentle, singularly low, as if instead of being so close beside him, it were at a distance.
Who and what are you?
Scrooge demanded.
I am the ghost of Christmas past. Long past?
Inquired Scrooge, observant of its dwarfish stature.
No, your past.
Perhaps Scrooge could not have told anybody why, if anybody could have asked him, but he had a special desire to see the spirit in his cap, and begged him to be covered.
What?
Exclaimed the ghost.
Would you so soon put out with worldly hands the light I give? Is it not enough that you are one of those whose passions made this cap, and forced me through a whole train of years to wear it low upon my brow?
Scrooge reverently disclaimed all intention to offend, or any knowledge of having wilfully bonneted the spirit at any period of his life. He then made bold to inquire what business brought him there.
Your welfare,
said the ghost. Scrooge expressed himself much obliged, but could not help thinking that a night of unbroken rest would have been much more conducive to that end. The spirit must have heard him thinking, for it said immediately,
your reclamation, then. Take heed.
It put out its strong hand as it spoke, and clasped him gently by the arm.
Rise and walk with me.
It would have been in vain for Scrooge to plead that the weather and the hour were not adapted to pedestrian purposes. That bed was warm, and the thermometer a long way below freezing. That he was clad but lightly in his slippers, dressing gown, and nightcap, and that he had a cold upon him at that time. The grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. He rose, but finding that the spirit made towards the window, clasped its robe in supplication.
I am a mortal,
Scrooge remonstrated.
and liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand. There,
Said the Scrooge, laying it upon his heart.
and you shall be upheld in more than this.
As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall, and stood upon an open country road, with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished. Not a vestige of it was to be seen. The darkness and the mist had vanished with it, for it was a clear, cold winter day, with snow upon the ground.
Good heaven,
Said Scrooge, clasping his hand together, as he looked about him.
I was bred in this place. I was a boy here.
The spirit gazed upon him mildly. Its gentle touch, though it had been light and instantaneous, appeared still present to the old man's sense of feeling. He was conscious of 1,000 odors floating in the air, each one connected with 1,000 thoughts, and hopes, and joys, and cares long, long forgotten.
Your lip is trembling,
Said the ghost.
and what is that upon your cheek?
Scrooge muttered with an unusual catching in his voice that it was a pimple, and begged the ghost to lead him where he would.
You recollect the way?
Inquired the spirit.
Remember it,
Cried Scrooge with fervor.
I could walk it blindfold. Strange to have forgotten it for so many years.
Observed the ghost.
Let us go on.
They walked along the road, Scrooge recognizing every gate and post and tree, until a little market town appeared in the distance with its bridge, its church, and winding river. Some shaggy ponies now were seen trotting towards them with boys upon their backs, who called to other boys in country gigs and carts driven by farmers. All these boys were in great spirits and shouted to each other until the broad fields were so full of merry music that the crisp air laughed to hear it. Oh, hello there, Yumiko. Welcome, and thank you for the snack time. Let's see what I can find. I try not to repeat snacks. Oh. Let's see what we got down here. Can't eat that. You know what? We haven't had this in a while. Let's eat some fish skin tonight. Been a long time since I've had fish skin. Oh, that's good. It's a curry flavored fish skin. That's got some big pieces here. It is very yummy. Very crunchy too. Forgot about that. Healing 20. You. No, it's not you. It's okay. Okay. Okay.
These are but shadows of the things that have been,
Said the ghost.
They have no consciousness of us.
The jocund travelers came on, and as they came, Scrooge knew and named them every one. Why was he rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them? Why did his cold eye glisten, and his heart leap up as they went past? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each other Merry Christmas as they parted at crossroads and byways for their several homes? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? Out upon Merry Christmas! What good had it ever done to him?
The school is not quite deserted, said the ghost. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still.
Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. They left the high road by a well-remembered lane, and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick, with a little weathercock-surmounted cupola on the roof, and a bell hanging in it. It was a large house, but one of broken fortunes, for the spacious offices were little used. Their walls were damp and mossy, their windows broken, and their gates decayed. Fowls clucked and strutted in the stables, and the coach horses and sheds were overrun with grass. Coach houses and sheds were overrun with grass. Nor was it more retentive of its ancient state within, for entering the dreary hall and glancing through the open doors of many rooms, they found them poorly furnished, cold, and vast. There was an earthly savor in the air, a chilly bareness in the place, which associated itself somehow with too much getting up by candlelight, and not too much to eat. They went, the ghost and Scrooge, across the hall to a door at the back of the house. It opened before them, and disclosed a long, bare, melancholy room, made bare still by lines of plain deal forms and desks. At one of these, a lonely boy was reading near a feeble fire, and Scrooge sat down upon a form, and wept to see his poor forgotten self as he had used to be. Not a latent echo in the house, not a squeak and scuffle from the mice behind the paneling, not a drip from the half-thawed waterspout in the dull yard behind, not a sigh among the leafless boughs of one despondent poplar, not the idle swinging of an empty storehouse door, no, not a clicking in the fire, but fell upon the heart of Scrooge with a softening influence, and gave a freer passage to his tears. The spirit touched him on the arm, and pointed to his younger self intent upon his reading. Suddenly, a man in foreign garments, wonderfully real and distinct to look at, stood outside the window, with an axe stuck in his belt, and leading an ass laden with wood by the bridle.
Why, it's Ali Baba,
Scrooge exclaimed in ecstasy.
it's dear old honest Ali Baba. Yes, yes, I know. One Christmas time, when yonder solitary child was left here all alone, he did come for the first time, just like that. Poor boy, and Valentine, said Scrooge, and his wild brother Orson. There they go. And what's his name, who was put down in his drawers asleep at the gate of Damascus? Don't you see him? And the Sultan's groom turned upside down by the genie. There he is upon his head. Serves him right. I'm glad of it. What business had he to be married to the princess?
To hear Scrooge expending all the earnestness of his nature on such subjects, in a most extraordinary voice between laughing and crying, and to see his heightened and excited face, would have been a surprise to his business friends in the city, indeed.
There's the parrot, cried Scrooge. Green body and yellow tail, with a thing like a lettuce growing out of the top of his head. There he is. Poor Robin Crusoe, he called him, when he came home again after sailing round the island. poor Robin Crusoe, where have you been, Robin Crusoe? The man thought he was dreaming, but he wasn't. He was the parrot, you know. There goes Friday, running for his life to the little creek. Hello! Whoop! Hello!
Then, with a rapidity of transition very foreign to his usual character, he said in pity for his former self,
Poor boy.
and cried again.
I I wish,
Scrooge muttered, putting his hand in his pocket and looking about him after drying his eyes with his cuff.
but it's too late now.
What is the matter? Asked the spirit.
Nothing,
Said Scrooge.
nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something. That's all.
The ghost smiled thoughtfully and waved its hand, saying as it did so, "Let us see another Christmas." Scrooge's former self grew larger at the words, and the room became a little darker and more dirty. The panels shrunk, the windows cracked. Fragments of plaster fell out of the ceiling, and the naked laths were shown instead. But how all this was brought about, Scrooge knew no more than you do. He only knew that it was quite correct, that everything had happened so. There he was, alone again, when all the other boys had gone home for the jolly holidays. He was not reading now, but walking up and down despairedly. Scrooge looked at the ghost, and with a mournful shaking of his head, glanced anxiously towards the door. 1 second. I gotta get another water. Well, open up another water. Oh, gotta go through a lot of these tonight. It opened, and a little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in, and putting her arms about his neck, and often kissing him, addressed him as her
Dear, dear brother! I have come to bring you home, dear brother,
said the child, clapping her tiny hands and bending down to laugh.
to bring you home, home, home. Home, little fan,
returned the boy.
Yes,
Said the child, brimful of glee.
home for good and all, home for ever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be, that home's like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night that I was going to bed, that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home, and he said yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to bring you, and you're to be a man,
Said the child, opening her eyes.
and are never to come back here. But first we're to be together all the Christmas long, and have the merriest time in all the world. You're quite a, yeah, you're quite a woman, little fan,
Exclaimed the boy. She clapped her hands and laughed, and tried to touch his head, but being too little, laughed again, and stood on tiptoe to embrace him. Then she began to drag him in her child's eagerness towards the door, and he, nothing loath to go, accompanied her. A terrible voice in the hall cried, "Bring down Master Scrooge's books there!" And in the hall appeared the schoolmaster himself, who glared on Master Scrooge with a ferocious condescension, and threw him into a dreadful state of mind by shaking hands with him. He then conveyed him and his sister into the veriest old well of a shivering best parlor that ever was seen, where the maps upon the wall, and the celestial and terrestrial globes in the windows were waxy with cold. Here he produced a decanter of curiously light wine and a block of curiously heavy cake, and administered installments of those dainties to the young people, at the same time saying out a meager servant to offer a glass of something to the postboy, who answered that he thanked the gentleman, but if it was the same tap as he had tasted before, he had rather not. Master Scrooge's trunk being by this time tied onto the top of the chaise, the children bade the schoolmaster good-bye right willingly, and getting into it, drove gaily down the garden sweep, the quick wheels dashing the hoar-frost and snow from off the dark leaves of the evergreens like spray.
Always a delicate creature, whom a breath might have withered,
Said the ghost.
but she had a large heart.
So she had, cried Scrooge. You're right. I'll not gainsay it, spirit. God forbid.
She died a woman,
Said the ghost.
and had, as I think, children.
One child,
Scrooge returned.
True,
Said the ghost.
your nephew.
Scrooge seemed uneasy in his mind, and answered briefly,
yes.
although they had but that moment left the school behind them, they were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city, where one shall. One moment, my dear scholars, I have to move something quick. Oh, thank you, Yumiko. Just had to check on Virgil. Thought something was happening. Thank you, Yumiko. Where were we? Ah, yes. Scrooge seemed uneasy in his mind, and answered briefly,
Yes.
although they had but that moment left the school behind them, they were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city, where shadowy passengers passed and repassed, where shadowy carts and coaches battled for the way, and all the strife and tumult of a real city were. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here too it was Christmas time again. But it was evening, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door, and asked Scrooge if he knew it.
Know it, said Scrooge. Was I apprenticed here?
They went in. At the sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig, sitting behind such a high desk that if he had been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling, Scrooge cried in great excitement,
Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig alive again.
Old Fezziwig laid down his pen, and looked up at the clock, which pointed to the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, laughed all over himself, from his shoes to his organ of benevolence, and called out in a comfortable, oily, rich, fat, jovial voice, "Yo ho there! Ebenezer Dick! Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow prentice. Drink. Ah,
Dick Wilkins, to be sure, said Scrooge the ghost. Bless me, yes, there he is. He was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick. Dear, dear.
Julian 20, Organ of Benevolence. Give me a second. There's some guides in here which show actually explain some things. Organ of Benevolence. It's a term which is basically it comes from a pseudoscience about skulls, and the organ of benevolence is located at the top of the forehead. They used to divide the skull up into organs, um, and it was the top of the forehead. One second, my dear scholars. I'm gonna go back from to where Fezziwig talks. Yo ho there, Ebenezer Dick! Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow prentice.
Dick Wilkins, to be sure, said Scrooge the ghost. Bless me, yes, there he is. He was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick. Dear, dear.
Yo-ho, my boys! Said Fezziwig. No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up, cried old Fezziwig with a sharp clap of his hands, before a man can say, Jack Robinson. You wouldn't believe how those two fellows went at it. They charged into the streets with the shutters. 1, 2, 3, had 'em up in their places. 4, 5, 6, barred 'em, pinned 'em. 7, 8, 9, and came back before you could have got to 12, panting like racehorses. Poor Dick, I don't need to say more. Hello there, Darth. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We are reading A Christmas Carol. We are reading chapter 2 tonight. Well, Stave 2. Hey-ho! Cried old Fezziwig, skipping down from the high desk with wonderful agility. Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Hilly-ho, Dick! Chin up, Ebenezer! Clear away. There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away or couldn't have cleared away with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off as if it were dismissed from public life forevermore. The floor was swept and watered. The lamps were trimmed. Fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book, and went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it, and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In came the housemaid with her cousin the baker. In came the cook with her brother's particular friend, the milkman. In came the boy from over the way, who was suspected of not having board enough from his master, trying to hide himself behind the girl from next door, but one, who was proved to have had her ears pulled by her mistress. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came, anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couple at once, Hands half round and back again the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of affectionate groupings. Old top couple always turning up in the wrong place, new top couples starting off again as soon as they got there, all top couples at last, and not a bottom one to help them. When this result was brought about, old Fezziwig, clapping his hands to stop the dance, cried out, "Well done!" And the fiddler plunged his hot face into a pot of porter, especially provided for that purpose. But, scorning rest upon his reappearance, he instantly began again, though there were no dancers yet, as if the other fiddler had been carried home exhausted on a shutter, and he was a brand new man, resolved to beat him out of sight or perish. There were more dances, and there were forfeits, and more dances, and there was cake, and there was negus, and there was a great piece of cold roast, and there was a great piece of cold boiled, and there were mince pies and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came after the roast and boiled, when the fiddler, an artful dog mind, the sort of man who knew his business better than you or I could have told it him, struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. Top couple, too, with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them. 3 or 4 and 20 pairs of partners, people who were not to be trifled with, people who would dance, and had no notion of walking. But if they had been twice as many, 4 times, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them, and so would Mrs. Fezziwig. As to her, she was worthy to be his partner, in every sense of the term. If that's not high praise, tell me higher, and I'll use it. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig's calves. They shone in every part of the dance like moons. You couldn't have predicted at any given time what would become of them next. And when old Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig had gone all through the dance, advance and retire, hold hands with your partner, bow and curtsy, corkscrew, thread the needle, and back again to your place, Fezziwig cut so deftly that he appeared to wink with his legs, and came upon his feet again without a stagger. Darth, good stiff piece of work. This part has too many things I can make double entendres with. That is the masterful thing about these old writings. So many double entendres. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shaking hands with every person individually, as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. When everybody had retired but the 2 prentices, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads were left to their beds, which were under a counter in the back shop. During the whole of this time Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene, and with his former self. He corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything, and underwent the strangest agitation. It was not until now, when the bright faces of his former self and Dick returned from them, that he remembered the ghost, and became conscious that it was looking full upon him, while the light upon its head burnt very clear. "A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folks so full of gratitude."
Small?
Echoed Scrooge. The spirit signed to him to listen to the two apprentices, who were pouring out their hearts in praise of Fezziwig, and when he had done so, said,
Why, is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?
It isn't that,
said Scrooge, heated by the remark, and speaking unconsciously like his former, not his latter self.
it isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune.
He felt the spirit's glance, and stopped.
What is the matter?
Asked the ghost.
Nothing particular,
Said Scrooge.
Something, I think.
The ghost insisted.
No,
Said Scrooge.
no. I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all.
His former self turned down the lamps as he gave utterance to the wish, and Scrooge and the ghost again stood side by side in the open air.
My time grows short,
observed the spirit.
Quick!
This was not addressed to Scrooge or to anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect. For again, Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life. His face had not the harsh and rigid lines of later years, but had begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. There was an eager, greedy, restless motion in the eye, which showed the passion that had taken root, and where the shadow of the growing tree would fall. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress, in whose eyes there were tears, which sparkled in the light that shone out of the ghost of Christmas past.
It matters little,
she said softly.
to you. Very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in times to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve.
What idol has displaced you? He rejoined.
A golden one.
This is the even-handed dealing of the world, he said. There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth.
You fear the world too much,
she answered gently.
All your other hopes have merged in the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one, until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Have I not?
What then? He retorted. Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I am not changed towards you. She shook her head. Am I?
Our contract is an old one. It was made when we are both poor and content to be so, until, in good season, we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man.
I was a boy, he said impatiently.
Your own feelings tell you that you are not what you are.
She returned.
I am that which promised happiness when we were one in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often and how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is enough that I have thought of it and can release you.
Have I ever sought release?
In words, no, never.
In what then?
In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of life, another hope as its great end. In everything that made my love of any worth or value in your sight. If this had never been between us,
said the girl, looking mildly, but with steadiness upon him,
tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now? Ah, no.
he seemed to yield to the justice of this supposition, in spite of himself, but he said with a struggle, You think not?
I would gladly think otherwise if I could,
She answered.
Heaven knows, when I have learned a truth like this, I know how strong and irresistible it must be. But if you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can even I believe that you would choose a dowerless girl? You, who in your very confidence with her weigh everything by gain? Or choosing her, if for a moment you were false enough to your one guiding principle to do so? Do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do, and I release you with a full heart for the love of him you once were.
He was about to speak, but with her head turned from him, she resumed.
You may. The memory of what is past half makes me hope you will have pain in this. A very, very brief time, and you will dismiss the recollection of it gladly, as an unprofitable dream from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen.
She left him, and they parted.
Spirit, said Scrooge, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me?
One shadow more,
exclaimed the ghost.
No more, cried Scrooge. No more. I don't wish to see it. Show me no more.
But the relentless ghost pinioned him in both his arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene and place. A room not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like the last that Scrooge believed it was the same. Until he saw her, now a comely matron sitting opposite her daughter. The noise in this room was perfectly tumultuous, for there were more children there than Scrooge in his agitated state of mind could count. And unlike the celebrated herd in the poem, there were not 40 children conducting themselves like one, but every child was conducting itself like 40. Darth, I know there are a ton of movies and versions about A Christmas Carol. My favorite version is Mickey's Christmas Carol. That is a very good version. That is a very good version, Darth. I'll be talking about that after this, after the reading, a little bit. The consequences were uproarious beyond belief, but no one seemed to care. On the contrary, the mother and daughter laughed heartily and enjoyed it very much, and the latter, soon beginning to mingle in the sports, got pillaged by the young brigades most ruthlessly. What would I not have given to be one of them? Though I never could have been so rude. No, no. I wouldn't for the wealth of all the world have crushed that braided hair and torn it down, and for the precious little shoe I wouldn't have plucked it off, God bless my soul, to save my life. As to measuring her waist in sport, as they did, bold young brood, I couldn't have done it. I should have expected my arm to have grown rounded for a punishment, and never come straight again. And yet, I should have dearly liked, I own, to have touched her lips, to have questioned her, that she might have opened them, to have looked upon the lashes of her downcast eyes and never raise a blush, to have let loose waves of hair, an inch of which would be a keepsake beyond price. In short, I would have liked, I do confess, to have the lightest license of a child, and yet been man enough to know its value. Oh, hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome, Scrooge. Congratulations on the 7 stream streak. We are approaching the ending of our chapter for the night, but we'll have a little discussion afterwards. But now a knocking at the door was heard, and such a rush immediately ensued that she, with laughing face and plundered dress, was borne towards it in the center of a flushed and boisterous group, just in time to greet the father, who came home attended by a man laden with Christmas toys and presents. Then the shouting and the struggling, and the onslaught that was made on the defenseless porter, the scaling him with chairs for ladders, and diving into his pockets to spoil him of brown paper parcels, hold on tight by his cravat, hug him round the neck, pummel his back, and kick his legs in irrepressible affection. The shouts of wonder and delight with which the development of every package was received. The terrible announcement that the baby had been taken in the act of putting a doll's frying pan into his mouth, and was more than suspected of having swallowed a fictitious turkey glued on a wooden platter. The immense relief of finding this a false alarm. The joy and gratitude and ecstasy. They are all indescribable alike. It is enough that by degrees the children and their emotions got out of the parlor, and by one stair at a time up to the top of the house, where they went to bed, and so subsided. And now Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever, when the master of the house, having his daughter leaning fondly on him, sat down with her and her mother at his own fireside. And when he thought that such another creature, quite as graceful and as full of promise, might have called him father, and been a springtime in the haggard winter of his life, his sight grew very dim indeed. "Belle," said the husband, turning to his wife with a smile, "I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon."
Who was it?
"Guess."
How can I? Tut, don't I know? She added in the same breath, laughing as he laughed. Mr. Scrooge.
"Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up, and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone, quite alone in the world, I do believe."
Spirit, said Scrooge in a broken voice, remove me from this place.
I told you these were shadows of the things that have been, said the ghost, that they are what they are. Do not blame me.
Remove me, Scrooge exclaimed. I cannot bear it.
He turned upon the ghost, and seeing that looked upon him with a face, in which in some strange way there were fragments of all the faces it had shown him, wrestled with it.
Leave me. Take me back. Haunt me no longer.
In the struggle, if that can be called a struggle, in which the ghost, with no visible resistance on its own part, was undisturbed by any effort of its adversary, Scrooge observed that its light was burning high and bright, and dimly connecting that with its influence over him, he seized the extinguisher cap and by a sudden action pressed it down upon its head. The spirit dropped beneath it, so that the extinguisher covered its whole form. But though Scrooge pressed it down with all his force, he could not hide the light, which streamed from under it in an unbroken flood upon the ground. He was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, of being in his own bedroom. He gave the cap a parting squeeze, in which his hand relaxed, and had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. And that's the end of Stave 2. Whew. That is a very dramatic one, and one of the longer ones, though not the longest chapter, which will be next week. The Ghost of Christmas Past is an interesting character. It's an interesting chapter too, in that how often it's depicted in various media. Julian20, nice job. Oh, thank you, thank you. Very often versions of this chapter cut things out or edit them down. Probably one of the most infamous 1935's version, the earliest. Darth Dickens really knows how to handle long ones. I mean, chapter. Darth, naughty Darth. 1935's one, the Seymour Hicks one, cuts everything down to just Belle breaking up with Scrooge. And the 1935 one also makes an odd choice in that they have Seymour Hicks play young Scrooge. If I'm going to be blunt, it doesn't quite work because they just put a wig on the guy and he doesn't look any younger. He just looks like an old man with a wig. The 1938 version, which was next, which was Reginald Owens, was a much lighter version, a lighter film. So they set out to cut out a lot of the distressing things in the story. So they cut out everything past Fezziwig. So it's only Scrooge, it's only young Scrooge and the Fezziwig scene. And they actually cut out the party scene in the Fezziwig. They just have Fezziwig offering to take Dick and Ebenezer to his home for Christmas dinner, and that's it. Everything else, in fact, the ghost does say in the movie that she is going to show him when he was becoming worse and worse, but Scrooge basically stops her before she can do that. Oh, something dropped. Give me a second. Oh, there we are. So it doesn't really go back. The Alien 20 not as bad as the one with the Sherlock Holmes guy. I am not aware of that one, Julian 20. You might have to be more specific with that. When they did it in 1951 with Alistair Sims, they did something bold. Julian 20, the short version with all the fog. Julian 20, I don't know which one you're talking about. Again, you're gonna have to be a little more specific with names of actors and all that. But where was I? Oh yes, Alistair Sims did something very bold. They kept almost everything from the chapters. Union 20, I saw it on Rift Tracks. Rift Track, which one? I actually have seen Rift Tracks a bit. Oh, the Basil Rathbone one. Oh yeah, that one was weird. I mean creative, but very weird. Where Alistair Sims. Where was I? Oh yeah. 951 version does something very bold and very interesting in that they they depict everything that was in that chapter, and then they go further and add in scenes that were not in the chapter. And I'm going to say some spoilers here for the film. Hope you don't mind. They include scenes of Scrooge meeting Marley for the first time. We're introduced to a character who supposedly kind of acts as the man who corrupts Scrooge. We see Fezziwig's business closed due to bankruptcy, which is not in the book. They really don't say what happened to Fezziwig. Um, they don't say what happened to Dick either, which I always found that interesting. That in the story they say, Darth, every book reading stream I've watched this week has been reading Dickens in different ways. I've been making Dickens jokes. Oh, some of it a lot of submission. I bet, Darth. I bet. Um, one thing that always bothered me in the story is Scrooge's line, Dick Wilkins, poor Dick Wilkins, poor Dick. What happened to Dick Wilkins for Scrooge to say poor Dick Wilkins? Did he die? Did something horrible happen to him? They never really say. But yeah, they include Marley. They include the scene of Fan actually dying, which is it's a very effective scene, but it's a very really depressing scene. It's really good though, really good. Um, and they include Marley on his deathbed about to warn Scrooge, which is a really kind of an interesting forecast there. Trying to go through all the ones I can remember specifically. Musical version, 1970. They expanded on it again. They changed Belle, the woman, into being Fezziwig's daughter. So they add that connection. Oh, hello there, One True L. Welcome. We are having a little discussion post reading. Darth, I'll end my jokes for now with this one. What did Charles say when a book was dropped on his head? I don't know. What did Charles say when a book was dropped on his head, Darth? What did he say? I'm waiting on bated breath. What did Charles say when a book was dropped on his head? What in the Dickens was that hard thing that just hit my head? Oh, Darth. Oh. Mm. Mm. Anyway, oh, thank you for the hydrate, One True L. So 1970s musical version, they keep in everything. They change. They have a wonderful musical number in it. Um, Happiness, which very beautiful. Uh, they do an interesting thing here too in the film. Scrooge is played by Albert Finney, and like Seymour Hicks, Albert Finney plays both old Scrooge and young Scrooge, except what they do is they put Albert Finney in old age makeup. Took him 3 hours to get in that makeup as Scrooge. But for the young Scrooge scenes, they just remove all the makeup and he just plays himself at his normal age. And it's very effective. It's got some very powerful songs there. I'll talk about the depiction of the ghost of Christmas past in these after this because there's some interesting things. Um, George C. Scott version, I think keeps in almost everything as it was. We do get to see Scrooge's father, and they add in an extra little twist. In some of these versions, one of the twists they have is they actually make Fran older. They did that in the Patrick Stewart version, which again keeps in everything. Um, and the reason they do that is an idea, which is in some adaptations, that Scrooge's mother died giving birth to him. So you get a sort of mirror to what happened with Fran and Scrooge. Although, if you notice in the book, they don't say that Fran died giving birth to his nephew. All they say is that she was a frail young woman, she had one child, and that was the nephew. They don't say it was because she gave birth to him. So we don't actually know necessarily when she passed away. She could have passed away from a disease afterwards, but most people assume it's giving birth to the nephew to give that extra bit of drama and a reason for Scrooge to dislike Fred. Although he's not always called Fred in every single adaptation. One version of the 1970s musical version calls him Harry, which I always felt kind of iffy. So about the ghost itself. Oh, and Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol, that one. I should mention that because Darth. Um, Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol, I think, only shows the Fezziwig scene and the scene where he breaks up with Belle. And of course, before I forget, I should mention A Muppet Christmas Carol. Muppet Christmas Carol keeps in almost the entire chapter and all the events in it. Practically. One of the things they almost always cut out is the scene with Belle and her family in the future. I forgot to mention that. Most versions cut that out. The 1935 version, I forgot, shows that. Very briefly, like incredibly briefly. And the 1951 version doesn't have her married, but instead shows her helping at a like a poor person's charity. Excuse me. Now, the ghost. Now, the ghost of Christmas Past has always made an issue for a lot of adapters because of the way it's depicted. The ghost of Christmas Past, if you can tell by the description, is really strange. I mean, it's an old man but young man but old. It's kind of fading in and out of existence. It's a very strange depiction. So most of them try to find ways around it. 1935's version chose to depict the ghost of Christmas Past as nothing more than a glowing outline. And that's it. We don't see anything except this glowing humanoid outline. I mean, which is effective and does avoid the issue of actually having to depict the ghost. 1938 is the first one which actually starts a pattern. Many of these media adaptations will sometimes use, and also theater adaptations. I'll mention this as stage adaptations. Christmas Carol has been done on stage a lot of times. Will use a woman in place of a ghost. In place of a male ghost, I should say. The 1938 version is the first one to do that. And in some ways it makes sense because it does even sort of the gender balance of the ghosts, so it's not all male ghosts. You have a woman ghost in it. 1938's version does that. as does the 1970s musical version, which actually avoids using, actually makes her dressed in a winter, red winter outfit, which is an interesting choice. I mean, it has nothing to do with the ghost from the book, but it's his choice. Darth and Mickey's Christmas Carol, I believe they used Jiminy Cricket as the ghost of Christmas. They did, and it actually does work because Jiminy Cricket, if you remember from Pinocchio, was Pinocchio's conscience. And what does the ghost of Christmas past serve as? A reminder of his conscience from the past. From Eric, yeah. Um, but some of them do try to stick to it and adapt it. 1951's version with Alistair Sims is a man. He's played by an older actor, but they do dress him in the little kind of toga with the flowers and all that. The 1984 version makes an interesting choice. It is a woman, and it's played by, I'm trying to remember her name, Angelica Pleasance, Donald Pleasance's daughter. And if you've ever seen her, she has a very odd appearance. They make her look very androgynous. So while it is played by a woman, she gives off this androgynous feel as a figure. As God, she mean spirited in that movie. The 1984 version does very mean spirited in some ways. It's a very good version. I mean, I won't lie, it's a very good version, and it feels very ghost story-ish. But wow, she pretty mean spirited in that. 1999's version with Patrick Stewart, they hired Joel Grey to play the Ghost of Christmas Past. And if you've ever seen Joel Grey, he has a manner about him that really does get the whole old man but young. Firefly, he's very good. Oh, he is excellent in it. Very excellent. The ones I didn't mention, the version done with, that's what I'm looking for. Trying to remember the name. Jim Carrey, I think. Um, they depict the Ghost of Christmas Past as being a literal candle with a candle flame, which again, it's a nice touch and goes back into the thematic idea of light coming from it and holding the candle cap, and it works. It works. The Muppet Christmas Carol does a really neat thing with the Ghost of Christmas Past, which was they use a technique of puppetry where they shot the puppet in a water tank and then transcribed it onto the screen, which means it gives this very flowy movement when it moves. This very airy, flowy movement. I think they removed the cap concept, but they make it this very delicate, tiny spirit, and it's really, really effective. I think that's most of the major ones, at least. Oh, there is only one adaptation which gets the Ghost Christmas Past 100% correct, and that is I think it's 1971, maybe it's 1970 version. I can't remember who animated it. Alistair Sims was in it. It was an animated version, and they decided to go as close to the original illustrations and close to the original concepts in the story as possible. It's a short film. You can actually probably find it on YouTube. But the Ghost of Christmas Past is depicted exactly like how it's described, right down to the whole fading in and out effects and multiple limbs and stuff like that, which is really, really effective, and it's a really, really good version. So I highly recommend that version. Okay, so next week we'll be reading probably the longest chapter in this book, which is Stave 3, the second of the three ghosts, Ghost Christmas Present. It's the longest one. Be prepared for a lot of food descriptions because there is a lot, my dear subscribers. So don't come to this stream with an empty stomach. You're not gonna like that. And so Tuesday we'll be doing more of Spirit of the North, if everything goes according to plan. And then Thursday we'll be reading more of A Christmas Carol. So then, before we go, oh, Monday. Yes, Monday, Julian20. Thank you for saying that. Monday, we'll be doing Spirit of the North. My mistake. I keep remembering my old schedule. Monday, we'll be doing Spirit of the North. And Thursday, we'll be doing Christmas Carol. I should really put up my schedules again. But anyway, let's see who we can raid tonight. Is there anyone reading? Is anyone tonight? Oh boy, I don't think there's a lot. Don't know if there's a lot of people. A lot of watching the game events. Gonna double check some of these. I'm not seeing really anyone tonight. You know what? Legacy Bookish is doing a reading thing. Let's go read them. So then, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye-bye.